Here with Arlie, arguably one of the best players of this season. Does it hurt you that it was somebody like John who's not really a fan of the show that caused your demise?
No, that doesn't hurt me at all. John was brilliant in the game, and the biggest thing you have to do when you play Big Brother is adapt to the game. John did that better than anyone. He came in not completely understanding the game. He adapted to the beginning, middle, and the end, and he deserves this win.
The reason that I ask you that question is because I feel like you're the exact opposite. You watch every season, you know everything that happened on the feeds, and so is there no part of you that's kind of like, well, I wish Netta would have won because she's a super fan like me?
No, honestly, that had no real bearing on who I wanted to win. I would have been completely fine with Netta winning too. Whoever won the last HOH, if John won and axed Netta or Netta won and axed John, I was completely cool with either of them winning. But I'm happy with John winning. He killed this game. He beast moded at the end through the competitions. Brilliant.
I'm dying for your take on Sabrina's game. Sabrina was the subject of a lot of argument. I found that pundits, critics, fans could really see the beauty of her game, the manipulation, the loyalty. What did you objectively think about the way that she played?
I don't see any brilliance to Sabrina's game at all. I honest to God don't. At the beginning of the game, I don't know how it was perceived, but she did some cool manipulative strategic things. But in my mind, every other strategic player was sitting back and doing nothing. Who wants to do that at the beginning? So the fact she wore that like it was so cool, I'm just like, no one does that at the beginning. You don't want to put a target on yourself. Right. And she put a target on herself, got her whole alliance annihilated, and then she got dragged to the end because she was easy to beat in competitions and easy to beat for votes. That's the way I see her game.
In terms of your pre-show prep, I was trying to think back to all the U.S. seasons of the show. I've never really seen an alliance come together the way that the first five did. How much of an impact did that have on your pregame? I'm sure in every schematic you had, you never envisioned somebody coming up to you as soon as you enter going, okay, it's us five. Mm-hmm.
For me, the first five was never real to me, myself. I know it was really real to other members of it, but I always knew that I didn't want an alliance right off the bat. I wanted to create my own alliance, and I also wanted to do it with people I knew who were capable of running through the whole house. I said going into the game that it would take me 2 to 3 weeks before I would start putting together an alliance. So the first five was always me just acting. It was always me just playing along. I made sure I was at the bottom of it so that no one would come after me first when it did start getting attacked, which did happen perfectly. And I also knew that I was going to turn on them, create my own alliance, and they were going to win the game because, as you see, the sloppy seconds was far superior to any of the other members of the first five in all competitions, and that's why one of them won the game.
I think, obviously I was rooting for you at the beginning, but I feel where it sort of turned for me is I felt after Adele won the Buzzworthy Challenge and you recognize that he's probably a really popular player because everybody voted for him, did that serve as any kind of signal to you that, oh, wait a minute, if I want to do stuff after, if I want to be one of the most popular players like Janelle or Dan, I got to attach myself to this guy because it's obvious Canada likes him. Did that play a role?
A little bit, yes. I always saw that from Adele from day one, though, to be honest. And I always had something with Adele from the very beginning. Him winning Buzzworthy solidified it for me, but we had that very tight bond from the beginning. And it is about more than just the game for me. It's about future opportunities. It's about all-stars. It's about being loved by Canada. So that did all come into play, and I knew Adele was loved, obviously even before Buzzworthy, but definitely after Buzzworthy. So yes, that did come into play, but he was also a very good person to align with because he was on the outs, and I aligned with a lot of the people who were on the outs, and that's how the sloppy seconds came together.
Did it shock you? I just couldn't understand why nobody picked up Heather. Heather is just sitting there, an extra vote, and everybody was casting her away. I felt like you and Adele were the only ones that recognized, what are people doing? This is an extra vote.
Mm-hmm. See, in the game, I was very torn with that because I was that was my initial thought that no one's picking her up, and that's why I had to talk with her and did pick her up. But in the back of my head, I always thought someone else might have, because how do I know if no one else really did? Obviously, I told her she has to tell me if anyone else does try to, or if anyone else has, and she said no one else did, and I'm like, everyone's being stupid. But in a game like this, I didn't really believe it, and then I come to find out now that she had an alliance with John from the very beginning of the game, from day one, and that makes sense to me because there's no way everyone in the game was that dumb. She was an extra vote. She had no alliance. Her alliance just turned on her. And in my mind, when the guys all saved her, it was so we could pull her in. And the fact that like Kenny and Andrew didn't openly say, let's pull her in now, let's just get her out sometime soon because she's a floater. I'm just like that's how I knew this first 5 had no strategy. I was like, what are you doing? She's just, I'll pull her in then with myself and Adele and John, and we'll take over.
That makes total sense. In terms of like when I look at players, I'm always torn because I like active players, and what I mean by active is I like the brigades and like the horsemen, people that like align at the beginning and try to run through the house. That's why I like the first 5. But then there's a counter argument that says reactionary players are better. You know, the ones that sort of like wait it out, see the first alliance fail, like when the moving company failed, and then react accordingly, which is what the sloppy seconds was. As a fan of the show, what do you prefer watching? The people that align quickly and run it through, or like this sort of like mishmash melting pot that comes together only because they have to, like the exterminators?
I love both, to be honest, but I think it's really, really cool if an alliance is formed at the very beginning and runs through the whole game. The best example of that, actually there's 2 brilliant examples of that. One's Dick and Danielle. They ran through their whole season. The other's Will and Boogie in All-Stars. And, only in All-Stars. Their first time, they got annihilated and Will still won. But then in All-Stars, they were a huge threat. And they ran through the whole season and Boogie won. And I was just like, that is what I live to see. But then it's also really cool when the opposite happens and someone bands together near the end just because they understand that some alliances just crash and burn early. You don't have that trust when it's originally formed. So both are really cool to me. I'm just such a big fan.
How much influence did other people have on your game? I remember when I saw your diary rooms, the first thing I thought of was, oh, this guy's like Peter incarnate. And when I saw Peter, I was just like, oh, this guy's such a Will wannabe.
Well, I am a Will wannabe, to be honest. But the thing is, I don't feel like anyone else had any influence or say in my game at all. I did everything the way I wanted to do it. No one really changed my mind about anything. The way I played my game was I would take myself out of my shoes, put them in someone else's shoes, analyze the game from their point of view, and then react to how I think they would react. I never let John making me think we were buddies think we had a stronger bond. I always knew he would turn on me. I always knew that Adele was probably going to turn on me just because we had really strong bonds. I knew that wouldn't make them keep me to the end. So I just looked at, I don't want to ever be perceived as someone who like, because I had strong bonds with people, that's why I had alliances with them. I had alliances with people because I thought I could get further with them, and I always knew we were going to turn on each other at some point. I was a very strong player, and I knew that no one was going to take me to the end.
Amazing. Arlie, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
That was good.